Welcome to the AWHI monthly residential working group call for September 17th. I'm Joe Wachunas here with you like most months, and got a really great agenda as usual. So let's dive in. Great to see folks joining us. Our antitrust compliance statement: the Advanced Water Heating Initiative is a member-supported collaborative of professionals from across the U.S. This diverse membership includes numerous competitors, and care must be taken to scrupulously abide by federal, state antitrust laws. Members should remember that antitrust compliance is important at all times. At this and other AWHI meetings, participants should not discuss competitive pricing, profitability, allocating markets or customers, or promotion of a particular product or accessory. Okay, so this is our agenda for today. We'll do our introduction, lots to talk about, lots of news, and then we'll hear from Peter from Silicon Valley Clean Energy on their best practices guide for heat pump water heaters. So excited to check out that. Then we're going to hear from Adam Kimmel from Orbia, who's going to give us an update on refrigerants and a couple of new refrigerants that they are working on. And then we'll get close to ending our meeting with a sneak peek at some new heat pump water, at a landscape document that shows different heat pump water heater form factors from my colleague Vidhisha at NBI. So lots of good stuff. But as usual, and we may have a lighter crowd today because this is during the Energy Star partner meeting. So hopefully lots of folks are there. But new participants in AWHI, we always welcome you to come on mic and let us know who you are and what organization you're with. So please feel free. Anyone new to the residential working group?
Hi, my name's Whitney Ramos. I'm with the City of Mountain View, and we are doing a heat pump water heater social marketing campaign. We're in SVCE's territory, so it's good to see them presenting.
Oh, cool. Whitney, do you want to say just, we'd love to hear just a blurb on the marketing campaign, if you don't mind sharing.
Yeah, so we are focusing on Year of the Water Heater and focusing on heat pump water heaters for various groups, residential, commercial, etc. And it really will launch in 2025, but we're doing a lot of the work now for our campaign, getting art and promotional materials together, and more.
Cool. That's great. We host Heat Pump Water Heater Day, which we'll talk about in a second, but we love the Year of the Water Heater, so that's great. We can totally get behind that. Sounds great. Thanks for being here. Any other new folks to the residential working group?
Hi, everyone. Go ahead. Hi, Jeremy Good from Montgomery County, Maryland government. We have a couple electrification programs going, one for market rate and another for low and moderate income households.
Great. Oh, thanks. Exciting. Jeremy, well, love to connect with you and hear about those programs and potentially having you speak on a working group. Thanks for coming. Go ahead. The next person.
Hi, my name is Paul Guzman. I'm in South Bend, Indiana. I am with the Indiana-Michigan Power Midstream Rebate Program, and we are specifically targeting heat pump water heaters.
Oh, great. Fantastic. Has the rebate launched, Paul?
Yes, it has launched. We are both launched in the Indiana territory and the Michigan territory.
Wow, great. Any early results you want to share with the community? What are the successes and challenges?
Well, I think the biggest challenge, we have a fairly substantial rebate in place for the heat pump water heaters. Can I talk numbers, or is that?
Yeah, please. No, the rebates are totally great. Yeah.
In Michigan, we have an $800 rebate in place for heat pump water heaters, both commercial and residential. In Indiana, we have a $750 rebate residentially and $200 commercially.
Wow.
The pricing, that's not enough to move the needle very much. And I think probably it's due to lack of understanding of the end user and education of the contractors.
Yep.
For installation purposes. So we've kind of put it into high gear here in the fourth quarter, and we're doing a pretty substantial push, both education and working with both the supply houses and the manufacturers to recommend to them to get more education out in the market, bring it to the contractors. I think they're afraid right now where they don't have a good understanding of it, but they're pricing the product out of the market.
Yep.
You know, they don't want to do it, so they put a big number on it. Where your cost of installation is very similar for most water heater installations, unless it's a closet in the living space itself. Then you're going to have to do some venting. But beyond that, electric to electric change out, all of everything being equal, your cost of installation should be identical.
Should be the same. Yeah, we do hear about that. You know, contractors nervous about for them a new technology and increasing their price because of that. But Paul, that sounds great. I'd love to connect with you afterwards and just hear how the rebate continues to go. That consumer education, contractor education are all big themes that I think a lot of folks can relate to, and yeah, a lot of folks to chat with you. So you, Paul, if you're not, you may be on the phone, but a couple folks were wondering if you could put in a link, and then maybe one other quick follow-up conversation. What someone is wondering or question, what are you seeing for typical installation costs? If you can be brief, because we have to move on.
Well, I also, in my previous life, not so long ago, I carry a Michigan mechanical contracting license. And I've been a contractor for all of my life, family business back when I was a kid. If we just look at it on a dollar for dollar basis, we have a 50-gallon electric water heater. We got incoming cold, we got outgoing hot, and we got a 208, 220 line coming into the unit. That's going to be the exact same thing we need for a heat pump water heater. There's virtually no additional material that would be required to hook up a heat pump water heater as compared to a standard water heater. So let's throw $75 at the water piping connectors. Let's throw $75 at the electric. We got $150 there. We're going to have 4 hours of labor at the most for a couple guys. $320 of labor cost. We're going to put a 25-30% overhead on there. And then let's say the contractor wants to make a grant, which is going to be well over a 25% markup or a 30% markup. So now we're going to be sitting at about $1,800 that you can put out a unit plus the cost of the equipment. $675 for a standard electric water heater at the supply houses, and $1,700, $1,800 in our area for a heat pump water heater.
Okay.
You're looking at basically with our rebate put in, subtract the cost of an electric water heater going in, we can show a payback first year.
Wow.
If we put in the federal tax money, if it's applicable, we can get up to another $800-900 off. Basically, it pays for itself before you start thinking about changing it.
Well, I love that, Paul. I love that. Thanks for walking us through those prices. I love that breakdown. I love that first year payback. I'd love to connect with you. And if you can provide, other folks are wondering about the program. If you can provide a link in the chat, I don't know if you're near your computer, but I'd love to connect with you offline to get kind of the full scope there, and maybe have you on present on a working group meeting. But Thank you so much. I really appreciate that.
I will probably have to come back in later and do that
okay.
because I am driving.
Okay. That sounds great. Yeah, that chat should be open. So thanks so much for that. And then for the rest of folks who are new, if you all wouldn't mind putting your names and organization in the chat, we'd love to connect with you that way. We are kind of at the time for our introduction section, but thanks folks for the folks who were able to come on. Always such fascinating work happening nationally. Really appreciate that. Let's go through our introductions quickly, and then we'll get to our spotlight speakers. Did want to highlight that some big data for us water heating nerds was announced last week. The Energy Star shipment unit shipment data was announced for heat pump water heaters, and we saw big growth for heat pump water heaters. So round of applause for all folks who are making that happen. 35% year-over-year growth to 190,000 units sold. That's 3.9% of electric water heater sales, 2.1% of all water heater sales. That's the most units that have grown incrementally, 50,000 units over 2022. So really exciting stuff there. We're seeing some real market transformation happen. Still got a lot to go. We're excited, but can't get too excited. But well done to everyone there. And just other things we wanted to call out that we saw in the data, even looking at HRI's data, which includes last year and then through June of this year, we are seeing a decline in gas water heating. That's visible. Gas water heater sales have declined from about 52% in 2018 to 45% as of June 2020. June 2024. And electric sales are increasing now. AHRI doesn't break down heat pump water heaters versus electric water heaters. We hope they will someday soon. But we do get that data from Energy Star. So electric water heater sales are increasing, gas water heater sales are decreasing. And then just wanted to call out the Energy Star certified tankless water heaters, gas tankless, declined by 23% in 2023 versus 2022, and condensing gas water heaters declined by 58%. So we are seeing, I think, a marked decline in gas water heating sales, which points towards decarbonization and heat pump water heaters. So I do think that's good news all around on the sales. So we'll be coming out with an article on that in the next week or so. So congrats to everybody on that great news. We wanted to just give a quick plug for our all stakeholders meeting recap here. We did a spotlight on distributors a couple weeks ago, and we heard from RMI on air quality districts that are phasing out fossil fuels. You can watch the recording there with that hyperlink. So if you missed it, check out that great all stakeholders meeting from a couple weeks ago. I want to turn over this slide to my colleague, Susan Harris, who can talk to us about some of course, exciting things Heat Pump Water Heater Day included. Susan, are you on the line? Susan may not be here, in which case I can walk us through this. Okay, well, I'll walk us through this. We have, as folks know, we've been plugging Heat Pump Water Heater Day for a while. It's 10/23, got a great program set up. So please click on the link, make sure you're registered for that. And we want to also, we're closing our Excellence in Water Heating Award submissions at the end of the month. So get your quick submissions in for folks that you want to recognize for great work in heat pump water heating. There's a hyperlink here below for the Excellence in Water Heating program. We wanted to say thank you to our sponsors, LG, Rheem, Ariston, Medea, Nile, Bradford White, Bosch, and A.O. Smith, who we're still waiting on their logo, for all sponsoring and making Heat Pump Water Heater Day happen. A couple other quick announcements. Check out our September newsletter over here to the top left. A lot of great, jam-packed full of content on water heating, and our upcoming webinar that my colleague Vidhisha will be leading on equitable workforce development. Sign up for it here on the bottom. Great. A couple other quick announcements. I did a heat pump water heater tour across America, which has been a lot of fun, and I'm releasing articles on that weekly until Heat Pump Water Heater Day. You can check out the latest one to drop. The Bradford White factory tour is there on the second link. And if you want to see Greg Holiday from Bradford White and I do a heat pump water heater boogie, that is the direct link to the fun video from Bradford White. So that was a dream come true going to Bradford White. final announcement here. No, sorry, two more. Tomorrow we're doing a heat pump water heater session for Net Zero Buildings Week. It's titled Ask the Expert. We're going to have Bethany Sparn from NREL on, and Vidhisha and I will be there as well. But we really want to have it as an open forum to talk about trends, available heat pump water heaters, form factors, and what's going to come in the next 5 years. So join us there. It'll be informal. You can come on camera, ask your question, get your point across. There's a link to sign up for that there. And finally, DIY installations are a big trend we're following. We've seen surveys show that 30 to 50% of heat pump water heaters are DIY installed. With the San Diego Learn program, we are doing a live DIY session where we're going to do a DIY install on camera and get some good video footage out of that. You can sign up for that here. Again, have your heat pump water heater install questions answered. We'll have an installer live there for a DIY session and a homeowner. And then I wrote an article on that, Doug and Joe's excellent heat pump water heater adventure, to talk about it, how easy DIY installations can be if you're semi-handy. Okay, so thanks for bearing with us for the announcements, and let's turn it over to our guests. We're a little bit over time, but we have some time at the end we can recoup. So I'm going to turn us over to Peter to talk about our heat pump water heater guides. Best practices. Excited to chat with Silicon Valley Clean Energy about this. So let's go ahead and dive into it.
All right. Yeah. Thanks, Joe. Thanks for having us on today.
Yeah.
Peter Mustacich. Yeah.
Excuse me. And do you want to take control of the screens? You can do that with the top. There's a button that says take control, or else I can drive your slides. Perfect.
Awesome.
Right.
Yep.
Go for it.
Great.
Thanks so much, Peter, for being on.
Yeah, thanks for having me. All right. Did that move it forward for everyone? Just making sure.
Yeah, that looks great.
Okay, awesome. Yeah, so I'm with Silicon Valley Clean Energy. We are the CCA, or the Community Choice Energy Agency for Santa Clara County. So for the 12 cities and the County of Santa Clara that you see on the screen there. And really our like all CCAs, our mission is to provide clean electricity and then decarbonization programs for residents and commercial customers in our area. So just overall, we provide a lot of like rebates and programs, things kind of like traditional residential appliances like heat pump water heater, heat pump space heater rebates. We do like EV charging rebates, home batteries. We have some more kind of innovative programs like managed charging for EVs, tech assist for like multifamily EV charging install. And we do offer heat pump rebates, space and water heating for businesses as well. But today I'm excited to talk to you about a new resource that we just put out, our heat pump water heater best practices guide. This is a free PDF available to anyone on our website. And really the intent with this was to fill what we felt like was a gap for us. We have things that are glossy one-pagers on heat pump water heaters for residential customers. We do offer some more detailed kind of contractor specific training, but we didn't have anything kind of in between. And so what this is it's pretty digestible, but it's a lot more than like a 1 or a 2 pager. It's a 13-page PDF. It really aimed at informing customers and potentially DIY installers, and maybe even like kind of thinking like mom and pop contractors who are typically installing gas water heaters, but maybe this could be an entry point into learning a little bit more about heat pump water heaters. But really thinking about that customer that is planning on or is kind of already embarking on a heat pump water heater retrofit project, informing them about specific product features that they may want to be aware of and ask for that they may otherwise not know about. Give some kind of general recommendations on thinking about sizing, install recommendations and considerations. So really just trying to bring more in terms of awareness, so that they're kind of have more agency in kind of conversations with contractors. They know what they're getting. They know what to ask for certain things. And so that's why we put this out there. We're really we talk through at a high level how things work. But again, like this, it's pretty digestible. this is not like an install guide. Someone couldn't read this and then know enough to go out there and install their own heat pump water heater. But really, this is kind of a maybe second step. So excited to put this out there. And I'm just going to walk through kind of a couple of like key excerpts out of this. So one that what felt really important to us was to talk about sizing. And we do say in there, we have disclaimers like talk to a licensed plumber or contractor, before you make a sizing choice. We're not telling them to use our sizing recommendations to necessarily purchase a product, but really that, from our perspective, we are worried about the mentality of like for like replacement in terms of heat pump water heater tank sizing compared to gas tanks, which is mostly what kind of the incumbent water heaters are in California. And we really want to stress, that you may need a bigger size and that sizing should be based on the home characteristics, which don't change over time, right? Rather than the occupancy, which can potentially change. So we provide this table that references what their existing gas water heater size and kind of give an indication of what size they may want for a 240 volt heat pump water heater system. And do make a note that, if they're thinking about 120 volts, they may want to upsize that a little bit. We also talk about ventilation, providing enough air for your heat pump water heater to breathe, what you may want to do in spaced constrained situations, some of your other options such as ducting and louvered doors, but also some of the trade-offs with those. Such if you have louvered doors, then you need to think about cold air in the adjacent space or noise coming through. And we also touch on noise mitigation. This may a little more detail than maybe the average resident's used to seeing, but again, like we want to make sure that for someone who's proactively paying for this retrofit, we want to make sure that they know about some of these things to look for, such as like rubber grommets, flexible connections to kind of mitigate vibration noise. And lastly, a big thing that we always like to talk about, with our rebates, and I would say more and more, rather than just handing over a rebate, like here's your check, we like to talk about, what do you do now that you have a heat pump water heater? How can you make it work for you? Especially in terms of like bill impact. And really the key thing is to switch to what we call an electrification friendly rate. And this is going to look different depending on their local utility. But typically a lot of utilities have some kind of lower volumetric pricing. So a rate plan that's maybe different than a typical kind of mixed fuel rate plan. But something where, like I'm in PG&E territory, there's a rate plan called ELAC or Electric Home, where a resident pays a fixed charge per month. So they pay $15 a month, but in return for that, they get lower cost per kilowatt hour electricity. And so once you start electrifying home appliances, the economics on this make a lot more sense, and that $15 a month is well worth it because you're going to save a lot of cost in electricity charges. So we're starting to think about how can we embed this kind of messaging and recommendation into programs to make sure that we're really setting customers up for success. We also really try to emphasize in this best practices guide, make sure that you get things like a smart connectable heat pump water heater, a thermostatic mixing valve, so that you are set up in the future for DR participation. I really think that, from a customer's perspective, if I invest, $6,000 in a heat pump water heater project, and then I find out 6 months or a year later that I didn't get a thermostatic mixing valve, and so I'm not eligible to participate in a program that I want to, I would be pretty upset about that. So we're really trying to increase awareness. We're even starting to make like thermostatic mixing valves a requirement of our rebate programs. Because we really want to set customers up for success in the future and make sure that their installs are future-proofed. So that's I know I'm kind of going fast, but I'll kind of pause there and see if there's any questions on the heat pump water heater best practices guide.
Thanks so much, Peter. Really appreciate that. Yeah, we do. Thanks for also making up some time for us. Yeah, curious, just maybe just to start on that thermostatic mixing valve. Do y'all go into that in the guide itself, or just kind of mention it here?
We do mention it in the guide.
Okay.
Not in a ton of detail, but yeah, we have like a paragraph about it and why it's important.
Okay, cool.
I do want to touch on a couple other slides. I'll go quick. I know
yeah, go for it. Oh yeah, well, we have plenty of time.
Trying to make up time, but yeah, I dropped a link in the chat to the best practices guide and to our programs in general. I did just want to share some data. I know that there was a question on this earlier, but we've been running heat pump water heater rebates since 2019, so we have 5 years worth of data, and just wanted to share a little bit. We're always trying to collect more and share it, with advocates and others to help the cause. So if this here we're seeing like what size tanks are people installing for heat pump water heaters, and what's the average cost per project, and this is not including rebates or incentives in the total project cost. So here's some numbers up here. We're always collecting more, and so happy to share if anyone wants to reach out. And then lastly, I just want to, oh yeah, go for it.
Well, we'll come back to this one because this is a great slide with info. Go ahead.
Yeah, and then lastly, I just wanted to kind of highlight to one program we're about to launch, and oh yes, I see a question. Yeah, so most of the guide is applicable outside of California. The bid on rates, yeah, is a little bit specific to say PG&E, but that's only one small section. So yeah, we just want to touch on 2 other programs, kind of sneak peek of things that I think will be potentially of interest to people in the group that we can talk about more in the future. The first is that we're planning to launch next month an emergency water heater loaner program. This has been a big gap that we're looking to get more experience filling and to learn from. So we're currently spinning up a program. It's going to focus on single family homes, but essentially we're going to set up service line so that when customers call within 48 hours, we provide them with ideally a 120-volt heat pump water heater, or if not, then a gas loaner water heater, while then the contractor works on permitting and electric readiness so that they can come back and install a permanent heat pump water heater. So we have funding to install up to about 650 emergency water heaters. This is kind of feeding into a direct install program that we're also launching. So for low-income customers, this will be completely free. So they'll get a free loaner and a free heat pump water heater at the end of this. And for market rate customers, there will be some cost share. We basically have fixed pricing, and we include our rebates in that to make sure that they're getting a good cost. And the other thing I wanted to highlight is that earlier this year, we launched a Go Electric Advisor, which is a free concierge service. So this is something new that we're really excited to have out there. So basically, we have a dedicated phone line that's operable 9 to 5 on weekdays. We also have live chat and email, and residents or multifamily residents can reach out about any electrification question that they have. And so we're offering kind of free tailored EE and electrification plans for them. We'll help with any kind of technical or permitting question or any kind of like finance or incentive stacking. So on the right, you can kind of see here are some of the things by the numbers that we've seen this year in terms of what are most customers ending up getting based on what they call in and ask for. So we're seeing like a lot of recommendations, some technical support and services. So yeah, this is something that we'll continue tracking and monitoring. Really, like we want to support them in whatever step of the decarb journey that they're on, but we also want to understand kind of what are the real roadblocks, and this is a pathway for us to better understand kind of what are the real world needs that customers are running into out there.
Wow, thanks, Peter. That's amazing. Jim has a couple questions. Do you have any feedback on 120 volts in particular, on their responses, installers, experiences? Anything to share on 120 volt?
Yeah, thanks, Jim. So we I would say we don't have a ton of feedback yet, but hopefully we'll be collecting a lot more with the emergency water heater, and our direct install program will be leaning on 120 volt. We're really trying to avoid service upgrades as much as possible, so we'll be taking advantage of that technology, and we'll be monitoring bill impact and customer experience, and so hopefully within the next year we'll have a lot more kind of feedback on 120 volt. And then your other question, so our board just approved last month our first on-bill financing program, so we're really excited to be launching that in the near future.
That's exciting for water heaters.
The on-bill financing is technology neutral. It's basically can help with a whole range of electrification and some EE as well.
Great. Okay. Fantastic. Great. We have time for a couple other questions. Are you back to the slide on the costs? Have you, does this feel, compared to like tech data and other folks, are you all surprised by these costs? Do they feel where the market is right now? What are your thoughts on these costs that you're sharing? This is great data, by the way.
Yeah, thanks. It's about in line with what I would expect. We've seen a little bit lower costs than some of the tech data, I think, because of the way that we originally set up our rebate program. I think administratively it was a little more straightforward than some other rebate programs that we've seen. So in kind of adjacent territories, we do see a little bit higher costs, though obviously we'd love to see these come down.
Mm-hmm. Timothy's providing some anecdotal costs for San Francisco, which are higher. So yeah, great. On the guide area, or on the guide itself, what kind of feedback have you received from customers on the guide so far?
Yeah, good question. It's pretty new out there in the world, so I haven't gotten a lot of kind of real world customer feedback yet. I think we've sent it to advocates for feedback and kind of more enthusiastic DIY installer types who are already, and we've gotten good feedback. But I'm really curious to, once we start getting more feedback from kind of everyday customers, I'll definitely stay in touch about that.
Okay, that sounds great. And Jonathan's asking if the costs include mixing valves as well.
These costs don't. We haven't made mixing valves a requirement of our rebate programs, though that is something that we're hoping to change in the next couple of months. We have started tracking mixing valve costs as a separate line item, and we're seeing an average added cost of $200 when that is reported.
Got it. And some manufacturers are starting to include them in their units, which is exciting. And I know the 120 volts come with them. And speaking of the 120 volts, for the emergency replacement, I had a question. Once you've replaced, water heater maybe temporarily with 120 volt, is there room for that family to keep that 120 volt if it's meeting their hot water needs?
Yeah, absolutely. Yeah, that's the hope that, in a lot of those cases, the 120 volt will be more than sufficient, and we can just leave it in place.
Got it. Cool. And then maybe last question, Chris is asking, are all these installs replacing gas water heaters, maybe for the cost analysis slide, or are some of those electric resistance?
Yeah, these are probably over 90% replacing gas water heaters. We offer a smaller rebate for electric resistance to heat pump water heater, but the bulk of existing water heaters where we are are gas systems.
Okay, great. All right, well, thanks so much. Really appreciate it, Peter. Thanks for sharing that. Let me take control of the screen. And yeah, really appreciate you coming on and want to hear the updates on some of those really innovative programs in the future. So.
All right, thanks, Joe.
Yeah, thanks so much. Okay, let me get us back to our slides here. And Adam, why don't we invite Adam Kimmel to come on camera and if you want to take control of the slides, to give us a little update on refrigerants and Orbia's new refrigerant types. Go ahead, Adam.
Sure. Thanks for having me. Let me just see how I've never done the take control before. This is good.
You got it.
All right.
Yeah,
Perfect.
just driving at the bottom. Yeah.
Yeah, so I wanted to just quickly introduce myself, Adam Kimmel. I'm the business development manager for the Americas region. We make fluorine refrigerants. That's in short the best way I could describe us. Orbia is a global company, so I just have this slide to quickly kind of demonstrate the different regions we serve and our revenue and some of the key numbers. So the fluorine division is a portion of this. Revenue is about $1 billion. We've had a few different name change incarnations over the years since the 50s. It was ICI initially, then Mexichem, and then most recently Cora, and now we're going after the Orbia acquisition. We're now kind of one Orbia. So this Fluor and Energy Materials is what we're going to be calling ourselves going forward. So many different names, same mission that we've had. So I think before going into kind of the why change, see if I can make my screen bigger. The most important thing to note is that fluorine is an essential material. So we're a vertically integrated fluorine supplier. We own a fluorine mine in Mexico. I actually had the chance to visit that last year. And we see fluorine as essential. We know that there's a lot of counter momentum against it in Europe. So it's important that we remember, why we started to use fluorine in refrigerants in the first place, from a toxicity standpoint, from a performance and safety. Fluorine has been, essential in segments, not just in heat pump water heaters, but also mobile air conditioning and stationary air conditioning. So we've used fluorine for a long time. But there's a change coming, and it's mainly due to regulation. So, many of you hopefully are aware of this EPA AIM Act, which is constraining allowable CO2 equivalents. This is a major market disruptor because all of the CO2 equivalents basically go into the same pot, and the manufacturers and consumers can decide how much of each carbon equivalent intense material they want to use. So that in January of this year, there was a major phase down of 30% of the remaining CO2 equivalents from the baseline, which was already 10% lower than the initial step. That first baseline was taken in 2022. So here we are in this, hopefully you can see my mouse going around, but there's this the development window that we see between the 2024 phase down and the one here in 2029. So this is when the refrigerant change is most likely to happen, because then after 2029, you see there's only a few smaller steps before we get to the finish line of 15% of CO2 equivalents remaining from this baseline. So, again, all segments pull from the same pot of CO2 equivalents. So heat pump water heaters tend to be a little bit dictated to by the larger segments in terms of which refrigerants they use. So Cora's goal and Orbia's goal has been, we want to develop options for, heat pump water heater manufacturers, because availability of some of the higher GWP materials is going to start, coming into play. And, where availability gets constrained, then pricing starts to get volatile. And, we want to create options, not limit them. So this is, the slides up here to make it a little bit easier. So one of the problems that we see as refrigerant manufacturers is the need for an ideal refrigerant. So for people that, historically have used a single molecule, I think the spider chart does a nice job at showing the challenge there. So we want this shopping list on the left of low cost, easy to handle, easy to detect, easy to manufacture, and on down. Well, it starts to become pretty difficult for one material to deliver everything. And then there's various trade-offs that single molecule refrigerants have to go through. So the spider chart shows that. So as we look at low GWP, carbon dioxide refrigerant, propane, and even HFO 1234YF, all of these are single molecules. That looks good. But then you have HFC 410, which is the main stationary refrigerant material. That GWP is too high, so there's a trade-off. Non-toxic, same story. There's going to be, some trade-offs that happen. And you see with regard to 1234YF, which is really the most advanced single molecule that does as much of this as possible, you're going to have to give up some inflammability because it's an A2L. So it's not a non-flammable. And for a water heater that sits indoors, sometimes that could limit charge size. Heat transfer and pressure drop, it doesn't perform as well. Compressor and system cost go up a little bit. The capacity for heat transfer isn't as favorable. So again, each of these refrigerants kind of has to give up something in order to deliver as many of these as possible. Our point of view on this is, rather than try to pick the one that does the least things bad best, there's no good way to say it, we see an opportunity for blends. So taking existing building block type refrigerants based in fluorine and combining those together to try to deliver and tailor as many of these features as we can. When you open yourself up to blends, all of a sudden you can start customizing performance based on what the market needs. So this is where refrigerant innovation is going in general and in the heat pump water heater space. And kind of this chart and shopping list is sort of the rationale for why we think blends are so important and will be more and more common as we move forward. So the two new blends I wanted to mention that are ideal for the heat pump water heater market are 456A and 444A. So each of these is based on a material called 1234ZE. So this looks like 1234YF. It's slightly different in structure,
Hey,
but
Adam, it may just be me. Sorry about that, but I'm still seeing the ideal refrigerant conditions. There we go. Yeah. Perfect.
Yeah, the slide on my screen that I'm sharing was too small, so I'm flipping on I have 3 screens going at once, so sorry about that. Gotcha. Yeah, so 456A and 444A are the two, and they're based in this 1234ZE refrigerant material. 456A is a less than 750 GWP, and that's a direct replacement for both 513A and 134A. 444A is an A2L, so it's a mild flammable, and that GWP is below 150. So it's kind of future-proofed as these step downs continue to happen. We do have an option for below 150, and that's a direct replacement for 1234YF. So when we say direct replacement, I think that's an important piece because from an ease of use standpoint, you could utilize the existing system architecture, components, lubricants, everything, and just use the new refrigerant blend in place of either 134A or 1234YF. Part of the strategy that we have in developing these blends is to make them as easy to use as possible for the market to be able to adopt. And some of the nice things about it are the performance gains that I'll talk about in a moment. But I think some of the value propositions that we see in these blends are that the lack of YF boosts both performance and efficiency while creating a higher availability of supply. So 456A is a blend that has about half of its composition is 134A. So think about the fact that 134A is a higher GWP material. You can use 2 kilograms of 456 for the same carbon footprint of 134A. So it's a much more sustainable solution. 444A, just like YF, has a sub 150 GWP carbon footprint. And so that also adds, another alternative at that level. And as I mentioned here, both of them use existing components and are direct replacements. You can use 1234ZE as an option. The challenge with that material is it carries a pretty heavy capacity loss. So from the charge size standpoint and pressure drop and some of the performance metrics, ZE, we don't love that as an option. We use it as a base material for our two blends that can deliver better performance and efficiency. And we're working with some of the manufacturers of heat pump water heaters already to evaluate these new blends for next generation products. They've seen and understand the need for this change, that the fact that the existing refrigerants aren't going to be around forever, and that they want to get in front of these changes before the next phase down happens. So to the point of how they perform, enhanced flexibility and performance, I think, is an important piece. You see here 456A, maybe the colors are a little bit hard to see, but this top line is 456A, and that's COP relative to 134A. So in heat pump water heater vernacular, think of COP as like UEF. It's a measure of efficiency, output over input. So higher, the better. What we see in this comparison is that 100% is a 134A baseline, and each of these lines is relative to 134A. So if the COP or efficiency is higher than that, that's a good thing. If it's lower than that, that's where we see a performance shortfall. And you see both 513A, which contains 1234YF, and NEAT 1234YF give away some performance. So that kind of confirms the spider chart trend that we saw. Important to note, this is modeling data. I have some test data that I can speak to, but at the moment we've done a lot of this theoretically. Regarding capacity, similarly, 100% is 134A, so higher is better. We see 444A up here in addition to 456A, giving a capacity benefit over 134A, whereas the YF containing components are lower than that, especially as you get toward a higher refrigerant condensing temperature. And to the point of ZE, I mentioned this is you're giving up a lot of capacity. It's 75% of 134A. So using that material as a neat material, we don't think that makes a ton of sense. We like to blend it with other materials to give this increased performance. So this is a little bit tough to digest, and Joe, I'm hopeful that we can share these slides with the group afterwards to let them kind of digest everything.
Absolutely, yeah.
Okay, yeah, and if there's questions, feel free. I know this is technical, but the point is, this modeling data is confirming the fact that we expect a performance bump because we're able to customize the blend performance to meet the criteria that we need. So both 444A and 456A are PFAS friendly. So I'm not sure how much this group is aware of the PFAS momentum and movement in Europe. But there's a lot of concern over PFAS, which is perfluoroalkyl substances. It's a very broad term that basically covers most fluorine materials. I think fluorine materials that have a fully fluorinated carbon is the most broad definition that they're using. And in Europe, there's a lot of scrutiny over PFAS. And, do we want to use refrigerants that are PFAS because it could contaminate the groundwater and concerns like this? For refrigerant gases, the concern isn't the groundwater because it goes to the atmosphere. So we don't see that as big of a concern. What we do know is that Europe seems to be concerned with TFA, trifluoroacetic acid. This is the substance of greatest concern in the PFAS discussion. At least that's what it seems like to us. And so our strategy in using 1234 ZE-based blends is to minimize TFA where possible. So while Europe sorts out how and if to regulate, overall broad PFAS, we're trying to minimize TFA to help, encourage fluorine solutions that still address the concerns that Europe seems to have. So this chart just kind of shows, here's 134A, 456A, 1234YF, and 444A. These refrigerants, when they enter the atmosphere, are attacked by hydroxyl radicals that are in the air. It rips the molecule apart and creates decomposition components. So TFA is a decomposition component of refrigerants, and that's the component that it seems like regulators want to avoid. So 1234YF degrades into 100% TFA, whereas 444A and some of the other ZE-based materials like 456A degrade into very little. So that's another benefit from a future-proof regulatory perspective that we're looking at to try to avoid that issue while Europe considers regulation. These charts don't need to really go through on the right here, but they show the composition. So as I mentioned, these blends are made up of building block refrigerants. So 456A, as an example, in this middle column of the top chart, is made of about 45% 134A, 6% 32, with the balance of ZE. And similarly, 444A has about 83% ZE with a balance of 152A and R32. So R32 and 152A are completely non-PFAS. So the only substance of potential concern is 1234ZE, which gives this footprint a very low TFA decomposition. So this represents the latest innovation that we can think of to try to address these regulations. So we see, this footprint in terms of 444A looks like it's basically zero. What we've seen from atmospheric scientists is that TFA production in ZE-based products, they consider it to be de minimis, not quite zero, because it depends on the atmospheric conditions and the amount of UV in the atmosphere to determine the true amount of ZE. So the amount that they say, the amount of TFA that ZE produces is 2 plus or minus 2%. So you can see, given that, it could be as low as 0 or as much as 4. But in any event, well below 100%, and something that we look at as potentially favorable in the eyes of regulators. So that's what I had.
Thanks, Adam. Yeah, I really appreciate that. We've got a couple questions, if that's all right. So Jeff is asking, if you blend an A1 and an A2L, is the blend automatically rated as an A2L, or how do blends get rated for flammability?
Good question. So it's not quite as simple as a mixing rule, where if I've got 51% A2L and 50% A1, it's an A2L, it's or something like this. It's basically there's a test that they run. I think it's ASTM E681, and so to determine if it's A2L, it has to do with flame speed and flame diameter. So the flame speed has to be less than, I think, 10 centimeters per second, speaking from memory, so please don't quote me if I'm not quite here. I know that 10 centimeters per second flame speed is the right amount, and there is a diameter in that ASTM standard that if the diameter of the flame is beyond the amount that an A1 would represent, then it has to be considered an A2L. But A2Ls are much closer to A1s than they are to A2s. And in fact, the category of A2L was created because it wasn't fair, because of the flame speed and the flame diameter, to list them as A2s, because they just don't behave the same way. So in fact, 1234ZE, this base material, it's listed as a non-flammable by the Department of Transportation. So it's considered an A2L mild flammable refrigerant, but it's also considered non-flammable by those that transport it. So that's how close it is. But that test is what determines its flammability. So it depends on the composition, how the materials interact, and then how the composition represents in terms of flame.
Cool. Thank you for that. Give folks a chance to ask one more question, and while they do, I'm just wondering, next steps beyond the 150 GWP. Do you have any thoughts on like ultra low GWP refrigerants? What are the blends on the horizon that'll drive that even lower?
Yeah, well, and it's interesting because here's a federal versus state regulatory concern, because we know New York State is pushing really hard on this lower than 10. So I think the prevailing question is less than 10 going to be the standard, or is it going to be a one-off by a certain state or two? So we have options for less than 10. 1234ZE by itself would do that. You could blend that with another material, basically taking 10 as the ceiling, blend blend another material up there to try to increase its capacity up to that limit. But the problem with neat ZE, as I showed on that the previous chart, the capacity hit is huge. So see that blue line on the right chart at the bottom is the capacity of neat ZE. So you're really giving a lot of performance away. And more importantly than that, pushing the GWP lower than 150 doesn't really help the ultimate goal of the regulators, and that is overall decarbonization. That's because GWP is just one leg of the stool. There's indirect emissions, like driven by efficiency, and then there's embodied emissions based on how the materials are transported and fabricated. So pushing the GWP much below 150 doesn't really help you, because that isn't the driving force anymore in terms of the overall life cycle carbon footprint. So what we see now is an emphasis on efficiency. So in our world here, UEF. So that was another part of our strategy, was to say, we know GWP is going to be where it needs to be. Now we need to make sure we're keeping efficiency at or above current levels to reduce that overall climate footprint. And Orbi is huge on making sure that the embodied emissions are being looked after and reduced over time. We've got a major sustainability emphasis, I'll say, at our company to make sure that we're being responsible as far as that. And I know a lot of the other refrigerant manufacturers have similar goals as well. But so the next priority is not, it doesn't feel like it's as much, 10 GWP or lower as it is efficiency.
All right. Well, thank you. Thank you, Adam. Thanks. That's great points on efficiency and GWP and how to keep them all, at the right levels. Well, there's one more question for you in the chat. If you could answer that, that would be great. I'm going to turn it over to my colleague Vidhisha to close out our meeting today with just a sneak peek at our form factors landscape. So thank you a ton, Adam, for being on today and giving us that really informative overview.
Yeah, of course. Thanks for having me.
Great. Vidhisha, yeah, if you could come on camera, talk to us a little bit about this form factors working group and some of the research that the group has been doing so far, just to give folks a sneak peek for a resource that we'll be coming out with later this year.
Sure, Joe. Thank you so much. Good afternoon, everyone. I'm Vidhisha, a project analyst with the Building Innovations team. If you had been there for the all stakeholder meeting, you would have known that I did give a sneak peek about what the form factor working group is, and pretty much the same slide. So just a little bit deep dive into what this group is all about and the little cool stuff that we are doing with heat pump water heaters. Next slide, please. We are a group of 10, dynamic 10 people. We come from different organizations, and I would say we are heat pump water heater enthusiasts. So we had a lot of discussion about heat pump water heaters. We kept talking about it, but we were a little late to the party, and we realized that something has to be done for multifamily units. Well, when it comes to residential families or residential homes, we did a lot about single family homes and townhomes. But then what about multifamily units? What are the strategies and solutions that we can bring to the table? And that's how we came up with the late stage research development form factor working group. And the seed of thought, what can be done, is what led to forming this little project, which is very close to my heart because I've been working on this from the start. And we decided to come up with let's see what's there in the market. When we did try to look into the US market, we came across some of the emerging technologies, very little. You don't really there is no question of choice when it comes to combi heat pumps, split heat pumps, wall hung or 120 volt, but there is a lot of scope. But the scope and the market uptake and adoption was quite efficient and a lot of acceptance and success rate outside of US. So the scope initially started with okay, what is the US market? What is the scope outside of US market? And what is something that could actually venture into this market and be a certain solution for the multifamily buildings? But all of this is theory. So what really happens when it hits on the ground? What about the field testing? So that's how we involve another section, which is the stakeholder engagement. Now, this engagement is at two levels. One is trying to understand if there is a field testing being done, if the products are being tested, what is the success rate, efficiency, or how well they perform in certain geographic areas. If at all there has been any studies in the US, or if there has been any studies outside of US that could support this as a resource material for the study. The second stakeholder engagement would be talking directly to manufacturers, distributors, retailers, tradespeople, consumers on their perspective about this emerging technology. So when you talk about say combi heat pumps, what does really come to your mind? Like a combination which could do something different from what a heat pump water heater does. Just imagine if there is a unit which could not just provide domestic hot water, but can also provide heating and cooling, like space conditioning for the home. Doesn't it look like a very exciting product? But if you Google it, you wouldn't find a lot of products in the US market. So what is the limiting factor? Are manufacturers not willing to bring this into the market? Or are they facing some of the limitations and restrictions with respect to standards, efficiency ratings, or something else, which does not let them bring these products into the market, particularly in US, but they are doing very well, say Europe, Australia, Japan, Brazil. So what is that something that is stopping them? So this is something that we're going to put together in this little project. And by the year end, we are hoping to come out with a memo which could serve as a baseline for future project work. Next slide, please. So I was trying to put together a little note for like combi heat pumps and split heat pumps. So then this was like the first. The project outline did not really come out the way I really wanted it to be. As you can see, it's just a plain table. And I knew something was missing. Like the information is right there, but it does not really justify this product. I mean, this is a unique product. This product not only gives you hot water, as I said, it can also do space conditioning. But this table, it just comes across as a very plain table. And there were like missing pieces, and I really couldn't put together what could be something that could not just make this information understandable, but also engaging to someone who's reading it. And I was able to put this together in my next section for the split heat pumps. Next slide, please. So the missing part here was trying to provide like a concrete pack of information, but at the same time, like a little note on what this product is all about. Because when, as a consumer or as a normal person, when someone is reading it, they may not understand everything that is there on the technical spec sheet. But they look for simple informations like tank dimensions, if it's going to fit into their house. What is the UEF rating? What is the storage size? What is the budget? What is the price? What has been the review? So if this information could be put on the table, I think this makes it like not just easy to read, but also to understand. The fun fact here is there was a limitation which actually gave idea about this particular table that I've put here. So when I was trying to put all of these products in one table, there were a lot of information that were missing for each of the product. Like you can say type A information was there for one product, but it was missing for the next two products. The whole table just looked like a blank piece of information. So I had to divide all of these products into single tables so that they could just look a little bit more engaging and readable. And that's how I came up with this particular product landscape, which looks much better than my combi heat pumps. So this has not just been like learning and exploring about what the emerging technologies like are out there in the market, but it also has been a learning experience on how to make this information engaging to a consumer or to a general public out there. So this is a little sneak peek that we do at the Form Factor Working Group. At the moment, I'm working on wall hung units, trying to find the scope outside of US as well as in US, and if there are any field testing studies being done. Apart from that, I'll have a brief note on 120 volt as well. But this is like just an outline that we have put together. Definitely this project outline would evolve as we move forward. So if you have any suggestions or if you feel there are something that could be added to this project outline, which could enhance the quality of information, please feel free to do so because we do look for feedback. So that's all from my side, Joe. I think I was able to do it in the short amount of time.
Yeah, thanks so much, Vidhisha. Really appreciate that sneak peek. Yeah, so more to come on this great resource, and yes, the evolution of how it'll be presented to folks. So we'll be looking for your feedback on these heat pump water heaters for multifamily solutions. And huge thanks to Vidhisha and this working group for all the great work they've been doing on it. That's it. We're a little over time. Thanks everybody for joining us. We'll send out slides and a recording on the next day or two, and feel free to keep chatting in the chat, of course. Have a great rest of your days, and we'll talk to you all soon. Thanks so much.